good question here. I would change direction a little bit. And as someone who worked at a CDMO, although many years ago, I appreciate this question because different sponsors and different project managers and different projects themselves, the answer varies. But the question is, would you prefer to perform a technical batch, and there's different words for technical batch we could use, of every planned GMP batch? So would you prefer to run a practice batch, a technical batch for every planned GMP batch, such as all verum variations in case of more API concentrations, as well as for placebo in every development step? So, this is very much about risk and how you approach moving step by step towards the clinic or towards your next phases. Maybe I'll stay with you for a minute, Bikash, see what you think about that question.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a very good question here. And so you're talking about strategy and tactics here when it comes to sort of your product development side. So within the context of what you're going to have to put into your control strategy, which is the end game of process development, here you're going to want to be able to defend that you understand those factors which can impact the product CQAs. These are our famous critical process parameters, critical quality attributes, critical material attributes. And so you're going to have to answer these questions in some way, shape, or form to show that you've got data to substantiate your position around that. Historically, people have done small lab scale development work, and then they've sought to confirm that at the at some level at the CDMO when they've done their technology transfer to that particular CDMO. You can still approach it that way. We kind of live in a very interesting time, I will tell you now. You can do an awful lot of this in silico now in predictive modeling. This is something that the FDA has been pushing us towards for the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years. Everyone here is AI, talked about this, but this is predictive modeling. We've been doing modeling for decades, quite honestly, in some way, shape, or form on the aseptic front for decades, certainly in terms of demonstrating aseptic environments around it. So you could also complement your small scale development work with in silico sensitivity analysis, what if analysis. This is your comment where you said, should I look at all the permutations, high API, low API, et cetera? You can do that all in silico and determine what your vulnerabilities are. Where are the boundary conditions within which you can realize that? And that allows you the potential then to simply do one demonstration batch. That batch could be your registration batch. It could be your clinical supply batch. It could be a validation batch. So there are different ways that drug sponsors today are attacking that particular problem, but it allows you to sort of de-risk that tech transfer exercise with the CDMO.
I can add on to that. I think I like to think about it in terms of the risk, but also in terms of the financial capabilities of the team. There's a risk of failure going into a GMP batch directly. And so depending on the difference in the price quoted between the technical batch and the full GMP batch, you can determine whether you do the technical or you do the GMP almost as technical. And I would not recommend, doing this every single time. I think it depends on whether this is your first time with a CDMO, this is the first time they're running the process, or the product has never been made before. So, for example, you have a cell bank and you're in a space where you know that, for example, your plasmid likes to recombine and break itself into multiple pieces. You don't want to go into a GMP batch and then have a product that is going to fail only by the time you have your QC data at the end. You want to fail fast. And to fail fast, you want to run a practice batch. And so whether that happens under full GMP conditions or it happens, mimicked GMP conditions where it's still in the same space, it's still in the same with the same equipment and everything, but it's not under there is much more flexibility in making changes, but you're also doing that to gather, like Bikash said, that design space. You're beginning to explore that design space that you need to be for your QTPP. I would say that would be one time when I would recommend, again, a technical batch over going straight into your production batches. But also if you're making critical changes to process steps that cannot be that you can't just run a small batch of and know that translates in the large scale, then it's always better. So first time you work with a CDMO, you probably want to do a technical batch. You want to learn, you want to see their documentation practices, you want to see their microbiological practices, you want to understand that they collect samples at the right time, you want to understand that their people are trained and all of those pieces, in addition to the technical documentation that you get from that run. You're also learning culture. And then every time you make a very critical change to a process step that might impact your CQA, then you want to do that as well. So critical process parameters, making sure that risk assessment is done so early in development that you understand your process enough to know, if I make this change, then I'm likely going to change the attribute of the product. Because at the end of the day, you risk time and money, and potentially also risk the loop that you've already created between your production being complete, your product being released, and your clinical trial starting, or your product getting to market. And so you might risk a whole lot more than just that single batch price or that single production run. And so I would say just calculating that value as well is pretty important.
Yeah, and that was very good. And just to put a button on this, to tie it up, we have a comment in our Q&A box. Says, I believe you're talking about engineering runs, tox runs, and if the sponsor wants to get more confidence in their control strategy and manufacturing process, they have an engineering run before the GMP run. And that brings back memories, because that's the language we used to use. But yes, that's exactly what we're talking about.